A silence so perfect it felt designed, the kind that makes you believe nothing in the world could ever go wrong. The ship breathed like a living monument, its lights floating above a sea smoother than polished glass. A floating city certain of its own invincibility, drifting through a night so beautiful. It should have come with a warning. But beauty is the ocean's oldest lie. In less than an hour, this calm, glowing world would be broken open. Its steel, its music, its people, and every certainty they carried, all rewritten by a single moment of ice. Night settles over the vessel like a velvet curtain, soft and forgiving, hiding every flaw beneath its dark embrace. The ship drifts through the Atlantic with the steady grace of a creature certain of its place in the world. Its lights shimmer across the water, floating like a necklace of stars laid gently upon an ocean too calm to be trusted. Passengers wander the decks as if strolling through a city suspended between sky and sea, unaware that every step they take is part of a rhythm soon to be broken. Inside, music rises from the saloons, warm and weightless, drifting along the corridors, as though time itself has paused to listen. Laughter echoes in polished rooms lined with velvet and glass, while conversation spills like champagne easy, careless, untouched by fear. Out on the lower decks, furnaces glow with a steady pulse, fed by men who measure the night not by beauty or comfort, but by the heat that bites their skin and the sparks that leap from shovels into the iron mouth of the boilers. Every beat of the engines feels confident, certain, almost proud. Above and below, the ship breathes in two languages, elegance and labor, yet both share the same illusion that the world outside is as stable as the world within. The sea itself lies unnervingly flat, a silent mirror stretching to the horizon, holding the stars with a precision too perfect to be natural. No wind disturbs its glassy surface, no waves whisper warnings against the hull. Even the cold, sharp, old, watchful seems reluctant to speak its true name. The officers note the stillness with quiet curiosity, reading it the way a doctor reads a patient's pulse, but push the unease away. Nights this beautiful are meant to be cherished, not questioned. Far above the masts, constellations burn with ancient indifference, tracing their patterns across a sky untouched by storm or cloud. The ship glides forward beneath them, powerful and serene, its engines humming a promise of safety and strength. Everything appears perfect. Everything appears eternal. And yet, in the heart of that beauty hidden beneath layers of laughter, music, steel, and light waits a silence that does not belong. A silence preparing to speak. The night remains beautiful, but something inside it begins to shift quietly, almost politely, as if the darkness is clearing its throat before speaking. Subtle misalignments ripple through the ship's routines. A faint tremor in the air. A softness in the wind that feels more like an absence than a gentle touch. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, only the kind of details that slip past most eyes yet settle heavily on the instincts of those who know how to read the sea. In the wireless room, messages arrive in steady rhythms, tapping through the telegraph lines like the heartbeat of a distant giant. Reports of ice float between ordinary updates, carried by operators who have repeated the warnings so often that the words begin to lose their shape. Ice to the north, ice ahead, ice drifting in every direction. The officers acknowledge them, stack them, fold them into the routine, but a routine can hold only so much truth before it begins to bend. Out on the open deck, the air grows sharper. Passengers pull their coats tighter, assuming the cold is nothing more than a familiar companion of the Atlantic. But the cold has a different intention tonight. It presses against the steel, creeps through the railings, whispers along the lifeboats with a patience that feels too deliberate to ignore. Frost glints faintly on metal surfaces that should not yet be touched by winter's breath. Below, in the bowels of the ship, the firemen sense something amiss in the engines. The boilers respond sluggishly for a moment that is brief but unmistakable, like a breath held too long. A few men exchange glances, nothing spoken, nothing confirmed, then return to their labor. Steel groans faintly in the dark as if testing its own strength. The sea remains unnaturally flat, so smooth it swallows sound. No waves break, no foam trails behind the ship. Only a glassy stillness that feels less like peace and more like a warning written in a language few remember how to read. Nothing is wrong, and yet everything feels slightly out of place. As though the night is waiting for anyone to finally notice. For a long moment, the night pretends nothing is wrong. The ship moves with the same proud rhythm, its engines beating like a steady heart beneath layers of steel and confidence. But then, almost imperceptibly, the darkness ahead thickens just enough to disturb the smooth horizon, just enough to make trained eyes narrow in quiet suspicion. The stillness that once felt serene now carries a weight that settles uneasily on the bridge. A lookout wipes frost from his lashes, blinking into the vast, silent black. The stars shine clearly, every constellation sharp and loyal, yet something between them feels interrupted. A faint shape, pale and improbable, hovers at the edge of perception. It does not glow. It does not move. It simply waits, blending into the frozen air like a ghost learning how to take form. He leans forward, breath-catching as the shape grows clearer with every passing second. It is not cloud, not mist, not any familiar trick of light. It is colder than light, harder than mist, and it gleams with a quiet authority that the sea rarely shows. A prickle of fear climbs his spine. He knows this presence, though he has never stood so close to it before. His hand reaches for the bell. The first clang slices through the night, like a blade. The second strikes with urgency. The third lands like a verdict. Below, officers tense at the sound, exchanging looks that leave no room for doubt. Orders form on lips that suddenly feel dry. The ship presses forward, unaware that time has already begun to shrink around it, pulling every heartbeat into a tighter and tighter space. The pale shape expands, rising from the darkness with a silent, towering indifference. It is no longer distant. It is no longer uncertain. It is the night's first true confession. And the confession is made of ice. The alarm spreads through the ship faster than any shouted order. Men on the bridge snap into motion, their training rising like instinct from deep water. Commands cut across the cold air, sharp enough to feel like impacts themselves. Engines thunder as they reverse, gears grinding in protest, as if the ship itself understands the danger too late. Steel shivers along the hull, carrying vibrations from bow to stern like a warning whispered through bone. On the forward decks, crew rush to their stations, boots striking the planks in rhythms too quick to be calm. Breath turns white in the air as the cold asserts itself with new ferocity. Passengers feel the shift though they cannot name it, a tightening beneath their feet, a silence gripping the corridors between beats of the engines. Some rise from their chairs, glancing at one another with quiet, uncertain frowns. Others continue to laugh, unaware that the night has already begun rewriting their stories. Below, in the boiler rooms, chaos takes a different shape. Firemen battle the sudden tremor running through the machinery, feeding the furnaces with frantic precision. Sparks rise like furious fireflies, clinging to the air before dying in the heat that never stops moving. Valves hiss and pipes rattle, a mechanical language of strain that none of the men dare to misinterpret. Above them, water begins to drum faintly against the metal. Not enough to panic, but enough to warn. On the boat deck, officers assemble the crew with practiced authority, their voices threaded with urgency they try to conceal. Ropes are checked, davits unlocked, and lifeboats inspected as if rehearsal has suddenly become reality. The ship tilts just slightly, a subtle shift noticed only by those who know how a vessel should breathe. Lanterns flicker in the breeze that was not there an hour ago, their trembling light casting uneasy shadows along the rails. Voices rise on every level of the ship, some crisp with command, others frayed with fear. Yet through all the sound, the engines pulse on, fighting to obey conflicting demands: slow, turn, hold, resist. Every second stretches longer than the last as the ship struggles against momentum and fate. Steel moans beneath the strain, its deep, aching voice echoing through the decks like a warning too old to ignore. The crew brace themselves, knowing the true impact has not yet come. Passengers crowd the companionways, drawn by a sense of unease they cannot name, their eyes wide with questions no one has time to answer. Mothers clutch children closer as the deck trembles beneath their shoes, a subtle quiver that ripples through every heartbeat. A violin note falters in the saloon, the melody breaking as its player senses something shifting far beyond the reach of music. The ship answers with a low, resonant groan, a sound that travels through the walls like a troubled sigh from a giant forced awake. Above, the lookout steadies himself, bracing for the inevitable moment when danger finally shows its true intent. The moment arrives not with a single cataclysmic sound, but with a chorus of smaller ones, fractures, groans, vibrations that gather like a storm, learning how to speak. The hull trembles first, a deep shudder that rolls through the decks as if the ship is exhaling under unbearable weight. Every rivet, every beam, every bolt seems to tighten against forces older and stronger than any human design. The Atlantic presses its argument with steady, merciless persistence. Water forces its way forward, slipping through wounds in the bow with icy certainty. It moves with the calm patience of something that has done this countless times before, filling compartments one after another, claiming space the ship can no longer defend. Pumps awaken in desperate rhythm, rattling like rapid heartbeats trapped behind steel ribs. Men shout over their thunder, but the water does not negotiate. It simply advances. Far above, passengers feel the tilt grow unmistakably. What was once a subtle lean now becomes a slow, undeniable descent. Glasses slide across tables, doors swing shut on their own. A few brave souls still smile nervously, insisting it's temporary, insisting the crew will steady everything soon, but the ship disagrees. Its great frame groans again, louder this time, a sound so raw it silences every corridor it touches. In the engine rooms, heat collides with cold as seawater, surges against boilers not built for surrender. Steam erupts in violent bursts, painting the air in white fury. Men scramble through the rising water, torn between duty and survival. Orders echo down the ladders, but many are swallowed by the roar of the wounded machinery around them. Steel plates buckle with sharp, terrifying snaps, each one a sentence written in a language of breaking bones. On the boat deck, the night sharpens. The cold slices through coats and cloth as if eager to finish what the sea has begun. Officers call for calm, their voices hoarse with urgency. Lifeboats swing out over the black water, creaking as ropes strain under hurried hands. The ship tilts deeper, forcing every movement to feel like a climb. People cling to railings, to each other, to hope that no longer feels solid. Then comes the sound that cuts through everything, the deep, wrenching crack that splits the air like a scream trapped inside metal. It rises from the heart of the ship, long and agonizing. A single devastating note that tells the truth no one wants to hear. The ship is beginning to break. The breaking of the ship reshapes the night. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat sharpens into urgency as people surge toward the boat deck, drawn by instinct more than understanding. The tilt is unmistakable now, an angle that turns walking into climbing and standing into a careful negotiation with gravity. Lanterns sway in wide arcs, casting restless shadows that make faces appear older, more fragile, more aware of the narrowing possibilities ahead. Lifeboats become the new geography of hope. Their numbers, once little more than markings on the deck, now carry the weight of entire futures. Officers shout instructions, voices cracking as they fight to maintain order against a rising tide of panic. Some passengers obey with trembling resolve, stepping forward despite the fear that tightens their throats. Others hesitate, clinging to railings, convinced the ship's grandeur could never betray them so completely. The cold intensifies, slicing through wool and canvas with ruthless precision. Breath fogs the air in frantic bursts as families cluster together, each trying to shield the others from both the wind and the truth settling over the deck. Hands fumble with life jackets, knots pulled too tight or not tight enough, each gesture marked by desperation. In the confusion, decisions rise like sudden tides: who boards, who stays, who steps forward, who steps back. Some boats descend half full, their empty spaces glowing like accusations against the night. Others overflow with shivering bodies pressed together in terrified silence. Each lowering feels like a farewell written without words, a small world breaking away from a larger one that is sinking by the minute. People call names into the darkness, voices trembling as they search for replies that grow increasingly faint. Below, the ship's groans deepen. The angle steepens. The deck vibrates underfoot with the uneven rhythm of something fighting to remain whole. Crew members move with frantic precision, driven by duty even as exhaustion hollows their faces. They guide passengers toward the boats, lifting children, steadying the elderly, urging those frozen by fear to take the next step. Every second feels borrowed, every movement a negotiation with a collapsing giant. And still, choices must be made. Choices that separate hands from hands, voices from voices, lives from lives. Choices that will echo long after the ocean claims its due. The final moments arrive with a strange clarity, as if the night itself pauses to witness the collapse. The ship's stern rises higher, lifting toward the stars like a plea that has already been denied. Lights flicker along the decks, struggling against the cold that has claimed the steel. One by one, bulbs surrender, their glow fading into the vast blackness above. What was once a city of brilliance now dims into a trembling outline, weakened but still unwilling to disappear. Voices echo across the water: shouts, sobs, prayers, fragments of human sound swallowed almost instantly by the wind. Lifeboats drift outward, their lanterns swaying like tiny beacons in a boundless void. Inside them, people turn back toward the ship, unable to look away from the towering silhouette that held their world only hours before. Some call out names, hoping for answers. Others simply watch, silent, their faces pale with the weight of everything left behind. Then the ship convulses, a deep and haunting groan rolling through its frame. Steel tears apart in long wrenching cries that vibrate through the cold air. The enormous structure shudders, hesitates, and begins its final descent. Water rushes across the decks in a dark, relentless surge, pulling furniture, railings, and memories into its frozen grip. The stern lifts once more, suspended for a breathless moment that feels impossibly long. And then it falls. The ocean closes over the last of the lights with a soft, decisive roar. A massive swell rolls outward, lifting the lifeboats before settling into a quiet darker than before. Ripples fade. Foam dissolves. The surface smooths itself with eerie calm, as though stitching shut a wound the world will never stop feeling. In the sudden stillness, the night seems almost unchanged. Stars shine as brightly as they did at dusk. The air remains bitter and sharp, carrying the faintest echo of what has been lost. But the sea remembers. Waves, gentle now, cradle fragments of the great ship as they drift like forgotten chapters of a story too heavy to hold. Survivors huddle in the lifeboats, clutching blankets, children, strangers, anything warm enough to keep despair from settling. They stare into the emptiness where the ship once stood, a place now claimed by quiet and cold. The ocean keeps its secrets. It always has.